Imagine this: you're sitting at a family gathering. People are laughing, sharing stories, and reminiscing about the past. But as you sit there, you feel different. Not better, not worse, just different. You're physically present, but emotionally, it's like you're watching everything from the outside. You wonder, why do I feel this way? Why does it seem like I don't belong here, even among the people who are supposed to know me best? If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, you're not alone. And it's not just a random feeling, it's a profound, almost spiritual experience that often points to something deeper. Some people call this being a chosen one or a black sheep. But what it really means is that your soul is wired differently. You're here for a unique purpose, and that purpose often separates you from the familiar. Let's explore why this happens, and more importantly, how to navigate it. First, let's talk about the nature of being different. Throughout history, those who were destined to change the world have often felt like they didn't fit in. Think of Jesus Christ. In Matthew 13:57, he says, "A prophet is not without honor except in his own town and in his own home." Even Jesus, the ultimate chosen one, was rejected by his own people. Why? Because familiarity breeds blindness. The closer people are to you, the harder it is for them to see your uniqueness. They've known you since you were a child, and they often project their own insecurities or limitations onto you. It's not personal, it's just human nature. But for someone like you, it can feel suffocating.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
The first step to understanding why you feel like an outsider is recognizing that your family's inability to see you fully is not your fault. This is where the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche's words come to mind, and those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music. You're tuned into a different frequency, one that others might not understand. Your dreams, your thoughts, your way of seeing the world, it's all so different that it challenges the status quo. And let's be honest, most people fear what they don't understand. But here's the paradox. While you might crave acceptance from your family, your soul knows that blending in would mean dimming your light. You were not born to fit in, you were born to stand out. Your path is not about conforming, but about transforming first yourself and then the world around you. This is why you feel such a strong inner tension. On one hand, there's the deep human need to belong, to feel connected. On the other hand, there's the spiritual calling to rise above, to break free from the patterns that no longer serve you. Now, let's dive deeper into the emotional challenges of being the outsider. One of the most painful aspects is the feeling of being misunderstood. You might try to share your thoughts or passions, only to be met with blank stares or dismissive comments. This can create a sense of loneliness, even bitterness. But here's the thing, the very fact that they don't understand you is proof that you're evolving. If they could fully grasp your vision, it would mean you're operating at their level. And you're not, you're on a higher plane. This isn't about arrogance, it's about recognizing that growth often requires leaving behind the familiar. The Bible provides another powerful insight here. In Genesis 37, we read about Joseph, a young man with big dreams. He tells his brothers about his visions, where he sees himself in a position of greatness. How do they respond? They're jealous, even enraged. Eventually, they sell him into slavery. Think about that for a moment. Joseph's own family couldn't handle his dreams because it threatened their sense of self. But what happens in the end? Joseph rises to power and saves the very people who betrayed him. The lesson? Your family's rejection is not the end of the story, it's just the beginning. So how do you deal with this feeling of being an outsider? First, you need to shift your perspective. Instead of seeing your differences as a curse, start seeing them as a blessing. The fact that you don't fit in means you're not confined by the limitations of your environment. You have the freedom to create your own path, to rewrite the narrative. But this requires courage. It means letting go of the need for external validation and learning to trust your inner voice. Second, practice radical compassion. As frustrating as it might be, your family's inability to understand you often comes from their own wounds. They might project their fears, doubts, or insecurities onto you because they see in you what they've suppressed in themselves. Instead of resenting them, try to see their behavior as a reflection of their own struggles. This doesn't mean you have to tolerate toxic behavior, but it does mean you can choose not to take it personally. Third, find your tribe. While your family might not fully understand you, there are people out there who will. Seek out those who share your values, your vision, your way of seeing the world. These are the people who will uplift you, challenge you, and remind you that you're not alone. Remember, your family of origin is just one part of your story. You have the power to create a chosen family, one that aligns with your soul's purpose. Finally, embrace the solitude. Being an outsider often means spending a lot of time alone, but this solitude is a gift. It's in these quiet moments that you can connect with your higher self, your intuition, your divine purpose. Use this time to reflect, to grow, to dream, and most importantly, use it to prepare. Because one day the world will need what you have to offer, and when that day comes, you'll be ready. Let me leave you with one final thought for now. The 13th century poet Rumi once wrote, "Don't grieve. Anything you lose comes round in another form. If you feel like you've lost the connection with your family, know that this loss is making space for something greater. You're not here to repeat the patterns of the past, you're here to create something new." And yes, that's a heavy burden, but it's also a sacred privilege. If you've made it this far, then you know this feeling isn't just a surface-level discomfort. It's a constant, almost haunting awareness that you're walking a different path than the people around you. But let's take this idea further. Why does being a chosen one often come with such profound isolation? Why does it seem like the universe almost requires you to endure this separation from the people who should, in theory, be your biggest supporters? To answer this, we need to understand the role of contrast in personal growth. Imagine a seed buried deep in the soil. It's dark, cold, and isolated. But without that isolation, the seed would never develop the strength to grow roots, to push through the dirt, and eventually reach the light. In the same way, your feeling of being an outsider is not a punishment. It's preparation. It's the universe's way of forcing you to go inward, to build an unshakable foundation within yourself. Because here's the truth: if you relied too much on external validation from your family, you'd never learn to trust your inner voice. And your inner voice is the very thing that sets you apart. But here's where it gets tricky. The process of becoming your true self often disrupts the dynamics of your family system. Families, like all social groups, thrive on stability and predictability. Everyone plays a role: the caretaker, the achiever, the peacemaker, the rebel. These roles create a kind of unspoken balance. But when you start to evolve, when you step outside the role your family has assigned to you, it shakes the entire system. Suddenly, you're no longer playing along. You're questioning traditions, challenging expectations, maybe even exposing truths that others would rather ignore. And this can make people uncomfortable, even angry. Take the story of Socrates, the great philosopher of ancient Greece. He was known for questioning everything, for challenging people to examine their beliefs and assumptions. But his relentless pursuit of truth didn't win him many friends. In fact, it led to his trial and eventual execution. One of his most famous quotes is, "The unexamined life is not worth living, think about that." Socrates was willing to risk everything: his reputation, his safety, even his life, because he refused to conform to the comfortable lies of society. In a way, you're doing the same thing within your family. By being true to yourself, by refusing to shrink into a role that doesn't fit, you're forcing the people around you to confront truths they might not be ready to face. This brings us to another painful truth: not everyone will join you on your journey. As much as you might hope that your family will see your growth and celebrate it, the reality is that some people will resist. They might criticize you, dismiss you, or even try to pull you back into old patterns. This isn't because they don't love you, it's because your growth highlights their stagnation. When you rise, it forces them to question why they're still standing still. And for many people, that's too much to handle. So instead of cheering you on, they might try to dim your light just to make themselves feel more comfortable. But here's the key: you can't let their resistance stop you. In fact, their resistance is often a sign that you're on the right path. The more you grow, the more you'll disrupt the status quo. And that's okay. Your job is not to make people comfortable. Your job is to fulfill your purpose. Remember what Jesus said in Matthew 10:34, "Do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword." This might seem like a harsh statement, but it speaks to the reality of transformation. True growth often requires cutting ties with old patterns, old beliefs, and sometimes even old relationships. So how do you navigate this tension between staying true to yourself and maintaining a connection with your family? The first thing you need to do is set boundaries. Boundaries are not about building walls, they're about defining what you will and will not accept in your relationships. If certain family members constantly belittle your dreams or try to impose their expectations on you, it's okay to say, "I love you, but I need space." This doesn't mean you're cutting them out of your life. It just means you're protecting your energy so you can continue to grow. Next, focus on self-healing. Being an outsider can leave emotional scars. You might carry feelings of rejection, shame, or even guilt for not fitting in. It's crucial to address these wounds, not by seeking approval from others, but by learning to love and accept yourself unconditionally. One practice that can help is journaling. Write down your thoughts, your fears, your dreams. Get to know yourself on a deeper level. The more you understand and embrace who you are, the less you'll need external validation. Another powerful tool is meditation or prayer. When you feel overwhelmed by your family's expectations or judgments, take a moment to center yourself. Connect with something greater than yourself, whether that's God, the universe, or your own inner wisdom. Remind yourself that you are not alone, that there is a divine purpose to your journey. As Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God. In the stillness, you'll find clarity and strength." Finally, remember that your family's inability to understand you doesn't define your worth. You are not here to fit into their expectations. You are here to fulfill your destiny. And sometimes that destiny requires stepping away from the familiar to discover who you really are. Let me share one more story to illustrate this point. The philosopher Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, but becoming who you truly are often means walking a lonely road." Jung himself faced immense criticism for his ideas, even from his closest colleagues. But he didn't let their doubts stop him. He knew that the path to authenticity is rarely easy, but it's always worth it. So, if you feel like an outsider in your own family, take heart. This isn't a sign that something is wrong with you. It's a sign that you're being called to something greater. Embrace the discomfort, the solitude, the tension. These are the fires that will forge you into the person you were meant to be. And when you look back one day, you'll see that every moment of pain, every feeling of isolation, was preparing you for the incredible journey ahead. If you've stayed with me this far, then you already know that being an outsider is not a coincidence. It's not a punishment. It's a path. But let me ask you this: what if the very thing that makes you feel disconnected from your family is also the key to unlocking your true potential? What if the loneliness, the rejection, and the misunderstanding are all part of a divine plan to prepare you for something extraordinary? Think about it. Every hero's journey begins with separation. Whether it's Moses leaving Egypt, Buddha leaving his palace, or even Luke Skywalker leaving Tatooine, the first step is always the same: leaving behind what's familiar. Why? Because growth requires distance. When you stay too close to the patterns and beliefs of those around you, it's almost impossible to see beyond them. It's only when you step away physically, emotionally, or spiritually that you can begin to see the bigger picture. But here's the hard part: leaving doesn't always mean walking away. Sometimes the distance you need is internal. You might still live under the same roof as your family, but you're no longer ruled by their expectations. You might still attend family gatherings, but you no longer seek their approval. This kind of internal separation is even harder than physical distance because it requires you to hold your ground, to stay true to yourself even in the face of criticism or rejection. Now, Let's talk about purpose. Why do chosen ones feel like outsiders in their own families? Because they're meant to break the cycle. Every family has its patterns, beliefs, traditions, even traumas that get passed down from one generation to the next. These patterns can shape everything: how people think, how they love, how they see the world. But here's the thing, not all patterns are healthy. Some are rooted in fear, shame, or ignorance. And unless someone has the courage to break the cycle, these patterns will continue indefinitely. This is where you come in. You're the one who sees things differently. You're the one who questions the traditions, the rules, the unspoken agreements. And because of this, you're often seen as a threat. But what your family might not realize is that your role is not to destroy, it's to transform. By breaking free from the old patterns, you create the space for something new to emerge. You become the bridge between the past and the future, the one who carries your family's story forward in a way that's healthier, freer, and more aligned with truth. But let's be real, this is not an easy role to play. It's lonely, it's exhausting, and sometimes it feels like no one appreciates what you're trying to do. This is where faith comes in. Whether your faith is in God, in the universe, or simply in yourself, you need something to anchor you when the weight of your journey feels too heavy. Remember the story of Job from the Bible. Job lost everything: his family, his health, his wealth, but he never lost his faith. And in the end, he was not only restored, but blessed beyond measure. Job's story reminds us that even in our darkest moments, there is a purpose to our pain. Now, let me share something practical. If you feel like an outsider, one of the most important things you can do is reframe your story. Instead of seeing yourself as the black sheep, start seeing yourself as the trailblazer. Instead of focusing on what you've lost: connection, understanding, acceptance, focus on what you're gaining: wisdom, strength, clarity. This shift in perspective changes everything. It turns your pain into power, your loneliness into freedom, and your rejection into purpose. Another practical step is to create rituals of self-connection. When you feel misunderstood or isolated, it's easy to internalize those feelings and start doubting yourself. This is why it's so important to have practices that bring you back to yourself. This could be meditation, journaling, prayer, or even something as simple as going for a walk in nature. The goal is to reconnect with your inner truth, to remind yourself that you are not defined by how others see you. And let's not forget the importance of forgiveness. If you've been hurt by your family, whether through words, actions, or even their silence, it's natural to feel anger or resentment. But holding on to that anger only keeps you trapped in the very patterns you're trying to break. Forgiveness doesn't mean excusing their behavior or pretending it didn't hurt. It means choosing to release the burden of resentment so you can move forward. As the philosopher Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." In other words, rise above. Show through your actions that you are not bound by the same limitations. Finally, let's talk about legacy. Being a chosen one isn't just about personal growth, it's about laying the groundwork for future generations. The changes you make in your own life, whether it's healing trauma, breaking toxic patterns, or pursuing your dreams, will ripple out in ways you can't even imagine. Your courage creates a new template, not just for your family, but for everyone who crosses your path. This is why your journey matters. It's bigger than you. It's about creating a world where others can also step into their power, their truth, their light. Let me leave you with this: being an outsider is not a flaw. It's a calling. It's a calling. It's the universe's way of saying, you were meant for more, so don't shy away from your differences. Don't try to fit into a mold that was never meant for you. Instead, embrace your uniqueness. Own your journey, and trust that every step, no matter how painful, is leading you exactly where you need to go. As Rumi said, when the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, everywhere the soul sees its beloved, you are on a sacred path, one that is filled with challenges but also unimaginable beauty. Keep going. The world needs what only you can offer. And when you look back, you'll realize that being an outsider wasn't a curse. It was the greatest gift of your life.